Tonight we're stepping into one of America's darkest chapters, life on a Georgia cotton plantation in 1820. Not the romanticized Gone with the Wind version, but the brutal reality where human beings were bought and sold like livestock. You think you understand slavery from textbooks, but the day-to-day horror was far worse than most imagine. If you're finding these stories eye-opening, a quick like helps more than you know, and I'm curious where you're watching from. Drop your location below. Now settle in, as we explore what it really meant to survive in a world built on human bondage. The overseer's horn hasn't even sounded, but Samuel knows Master Whitmore's daughter Emma has been crying again, and when Emma cries, someone always pays. His bare feet pound the dusty path between the slave quarters and the big house, his heart hammering against his ribs. Behind him, his mother Clara watches from their cabin doorway, her face a mask of controlled terror. Samuel bursts through the kitchen door where cook Mary is already stoking the fire. "Where is she?" he gasps. Mary doesn't need to ask who. Her weathered hands point toward the parlor without looking up from her cornbread batter. "Been wailing since before sunrise. Master's been pacing the floor like a caged animal." Through the thin walls, Samuel can hear Master Whitmore's voice rising. "I don't care what it costs. That doctor better be here by noon or I'll have every one of you whipped raw." The threat hangs in the air like smoke. Emma's fever has been raging for 3 days now, and every hour she doesn't improve, the tension on the plantation tightens like a noose. Samuel creeps toward the parlor, knowing he shouldn't but unable to stop himself. Through a crack in the door, he sees Emma lying pale as cotton sheets on the settee, her golden hair dark with sweat. Master Whitmore kneels beside her, his usually commanding presence reduced to that of a desperate father. "Please, baby girl, just open your eyes," he whispers, his voice breaking. The irony isn't lost on Samuel, this man who owns other human beings, who can order their deaths without consequence, is powerless against his daughter's fever. But Samuel's sympathy is complicated by memory. Just last month, when his own little sister had taken sick, Master Whitmore had refused to call the doctor, saying it was throwing good money after bad. She died in Samuel's arms while the master counted his cotton profits in the next room. Footsteps on the stairs make Samuel scramble back to the kitchen. Mrs. Whitmore descends like a wraith, her silk mourning dress already chosen though Emma still breathes. Her eyes, red-rimmed and wild, fix on Samuel with an intensity that makes his blood freeze. "You," she hisses, "your mammy knows healing. Why isn't she here helping my daughter?" Samuel's mouth goes dry. His mother does know herbs and remedies, knowledge passed down from her grandmother who remembered Africa. But the last time Clara had tried to help a white child, she'd been accused of witchcraft when the fever worsened before it broke. 20 lashes had taught her to keep her healing knowledge to herself. I can fetch her, Mrs." Samuel stammers, but Mary shoots him a warning look. They all know this is a trap. If Clara helps and Emma dies, she'll be blamed. If she refuses to help, she'll be punished for insubordination. There's no winning when you're property. Before anyone can respond, the sound of hoofbeats thunders up the drive. Dr. Caldwell has arrived, his black bag bouncing against his horse's flanks. Master Whitmore rushes outside to meet him, desperation making him stumble over his own feet. "Thank God, doctor. She's been burning up for days. I'll pay whatever you ask, just save her." Samuel watches through the window as the doctor dismounts slowly, deliberately. Dr. Caldwell is known throughout the county for his skill, but also for his prices. He's treated the Whitmore family before, but never under such dire circumstances. The doctor's eyes meet Samuel's briefly through the glass, and something in that gaze makes Samuel's stomach turn. The doctor has seen too many plantations, knows too well what desperation looks like. "Let me examine the child," Dr. Caldwell says calmly, but his hand lingers on his medical bag as if weighing his options. As he enters the house, Samuel catches a whispered conversation between the doctor and Master Whitmore. "The fever's spreading through 3 counties. Lost 2 children in Savannah just yesterday, if it's what I think it is." The unfinished sentence hangs in the air like a death sentence. Emma isn't just sick, she might be carrying something that could spread through the entire plantation. Samuel's mind races to his own family still sleeping in the quarters, his baby brother barely walking, his grandmother already weak from years of field work. If this sickness spreads... Cook Mary grabs Samuel's shoulder, her grip tight enough to leave bruises. Boy, you get yourself back to those quarters and you tell everyone to stay away from this house. You hear me? Don't matter what orders come down, y'all stay away. Her voice carries a urgency that makes Samuel's skin crawl. But as he turns to leave, he hears Dr. Caldwell's voice from the parlor, calm and clinical. I'll need to examine all your household staff, anyone who's had contact with the child in the last week. Samuel's blood turns to ice. His mother Clara has been bringing Emma her meals every day. She's been in that room, breathing that air, touching those sheets. The realization hits him like a physical blow. His family might already be infected. And if they are, Master Whitmore won't call any doctor for slaves. They'll be left to die or recover on their own, while every resource is poured into saving one white child. Samuel runs toward the quarters, his mind spinning with impossible choices. Should he warn his mother to hide the symptoms if they appear? Should he tell the others what he's overheard? Every decision could mean the difference between life and death, not just for his family, but for everyone in the quarters. As he reaches the row of cabins, he sees his mother Clara standing in their doorway and his heart stops. She's swaying slightly, one hand pressed to her forehead. When she sees him coming, she tries to smile, but Samuel can see the telltale flush in her cheeks, the glassy brightness in her eyes that means the fever has already found her. The horn sounds across the plantation, calling everyone to the fields, but Samuel knows this day will be unlike any other. The sickness that threatens to take Master Whitmore's precious daughter has already begun its march through the quarters, and no amount of money or medical skill will be spent to stop it there. Clara reaches for her son's hand, her palm burning with fever, and whispers, "Baby, we got to be strong now. Whatever comes, we survive it together." But Samuel can see the fear in her eyes, the knowledge that for people like them, survival depends on luck more than love. The real nightmare of plantation life isn't just the work or the whips. It's moments like this, when a child must choose between obeying his master's orders and protecting his family, knowing that either choice could destroy everyone he loves. By midday, Clara can barely stand, but she's still trying to prepare Master Whitmore's lunch. Samuel watches in agony as his mother's hands shake while cutting ham, her breath coming in short gasps that she tries to muffle behind pressed lips. Cook Mary keeps shooting worried glances toward the quarters, where 2 more cabins have gone silent, no smoke from chimneys, no children playing outside. "Mama, you need to lie down," Samuel whispers urgently, but Clara shakes her head with fierce determination. "Can't, baby. Master already lost his temper twice this morning. If his meal ain't ready..." She doesn't need to finish. They both know what happens when Master Whitmore's patience runs thin. The kitchen door bursts open and Overseer Thompson storms in, his face flushed with anger and something else, fear. "Where's that boy Samuel? Master wants to see him in the study. Now." Thompson's hand rests on the whip coiled at his belt, but there's a nervous energy about him that Samuel has never seen before. Even the overseer knows something terrible is spreading through the plantation. Samuel's legs feel like water as he follows Thompson through the big house. The parlor is empty now. Emma has been moved upstairs where Dr. Caldwell tends to her behind closed doors. Master Whitmore paces his study like a caged animal, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. Papers are scattered across his desk, cotton prices, shipping manifests, and what looks like a hastily written will. "Boy," Master Whitmore's voice cracks with exhaustion, "I need you to ride to the Thompson plantation and bring back their doctor. Dr. Caldwell says he can't handle this alone." He pauses, studying Samuel's face with desperate eyes. "You're smart, aren't you? Smarter than most of your kind. You understand what I'm asking." Samuel's heart pounds as he realizes the trap. Master Whitmore wants him to leave the plantation, to abandon his sick mother and ride for help that will only benefit the big house. But if he refuses, he'll face the whip. If he goes, his mother might die alone while he's away. The choice tears at him like a physical wound. "Master, sir," Samuel's voice trembles, "my mama's feeling poorly. Maybe someone else could." The backhanded slap comes so fast he doesn't see it coming. The force sends him stumbling against the wall, his cheek burning with pain and humiliation. "Your mama is property, boy, my property. And right now my daughter is dying while you worry about a slave who can be replaced." Master Whitmore's voice rises to a roar, but underneath the anger, Samuel hears pure terror. The man is watching his world crumble, and he'll destroy anyone who gets in his way. Samuel tastes blood in his mouth as he straightens, but something has shifted inside him. For the first time in his 12 years, he looks directly into Master Whitmore's eyes and sees not a god to be feared, but a desperate man no different from his own father when the baby had been sick. The realization is both terrifying and oddly empowering. "I'll go, Master," Samuel says quietly, but his mind is already racing. The Thompson plantation is 8 miles away. If he rides hard, he can be back by evening. But first, he needs to see his mother, to give her the herbs hidden in their cabin, to tell her to hold on just a little longer. As Samuel heads for the stables, he passes the quarters and sees a sight that stops him cold. Old Moses, the plantation's eldest slave, is carrying a small bundle wrapped in blanket toward the woods behind the cabins. Samuel doesn't need to ask what's inside. The bundle is too small, too still. Someone's child has already lost the fight against the fever. The grief hits him like a physical blow, followed immediately by rage so pure it makes his vision blur. While Master Whitmore counts his money and demands doctors for his daughter, children in the quarters die without even basic medicine. The injustice of it burns in Samuel's chest like swallowed fire. At the stables, Samuel saddles Master Whitmore's fastest horse, his hands moving automatically while his mind churns with forbidden thoughts. What if he simply rode away, kept riding until he reached somewhere, anywhere, that people like him were free? But the thought of his mother dying alone crushes that hope before it can fully form. As he mounts the horse, he sees a figure approaching from the big house, Dr. Caldwell, his face grim with news. Samuel pretends to check the saddle straps while straining to overhear the doctor's words to Overseer Thompson. "The child's condition is deteriorating rapidly, and I'm afraid it's spreading faster than we anticipated. 3 more plantations in the county have reported cases." Thompson's face goes white. "What about the quarters?" His voice drops to a whisper, as if speaking the words too loudly might make his fears come true. Dr. Caldwell shrugs with cold indifference. "Natural selection, I suppose. The weak ones won't survive, but the strong ones will build immunity, might even improve your stock in the long run." He speaks about human beings like they're cattle, and Samuel has to grip the saddle horn to keep from screaming. The doctor continues, "Of course, if it spreads to the house slaves, you'll have bigger problems. I'd suggest isolating anyone showing symptoms immediately." Samuel's blood freezes. His mother won't be able to hide her fever much longer, and when they discover she's sick. Without waiting for dismissal, Samuel spurs the horse toward the plantation gates. He has to reach the Thompson place and get back before his mother's condition becomes obvious to everyone. But as he gallops down the dusty road, a terrible thought occurs to him. What if the Thompson doctor refuses to come? What if no one will risk exposure to help a dying child on a plantation where sickness is already spreading? The sun beats down mercilessly as Samuel pushes the horse harder than he should, but time is running out. Behind him, smoke no longer rises from half the chimneys in the quarters. Ahead of him lies his only hope of saving the one person who's shown him love in a world built on hatred. But deep in his heart, Samuel knows that even if he succeeds, even if he brings back a dozen doctors, nothing will change the fundamental truth of their existence, that some lives matter and others don't, and no amount of love or hope can alter that brutal equation. The Thompson plantation appears on the horizon like a mirage, its white columns gleaming in the afternoon sun. Samuel's heart sinks as he realizes this place looks exactly like home, another monument to human bondage, another world where children like him exist only to serve. But somewhere in that house might be the key to saving Emma Whitmore. And if Emma lives, maybe Master Whitmore's gratitude will extend to mercy for a sick slave woman who spent her life in service to his family. It's a desperate hope, built on the shifting sands of a cruel man's whims, but it's the only hope Samuel has left. The Thompson plantation's main house looms before Samuel like a fortress, its pristine white columns mocking the desperation that brought him here. As he dismounts, his legs shake from the hard ride, but it's fear more than exhaustion that makes his hands tremble. A house slave named Marcus approaches cautiously. Samuel recognizes him from church gatherings where enslaved people from different plantations sometimes meet. "Boy, what you doing here riding Master Whitmore's horse like that?" Marcus's voice carries a warning. "You know better than to come calling without permission." But his eyes show concern, not anger. Word travels fast between plantations, and everyone knows about the sickness spreading through the county. "Need to see your master's doctor," Samuel gasps, still catching his breath. "Master Whitmore's daughter is dying, and our doctor needs help." The words taste like ash in his mouth, begging for medical aid that will never extend to his own people. Marcus's face darkens. "Dr. Harrison ain't here. Left this morning for Charleston, said he wouldn't be back for a week." Samuel's heart plummets. The one hope he'd carried across 8 miles of dusty road has just crumbled to nothing. But Marcus continues in a lower voice. "But boy, you need to know something. That fever, it ain't what they think it is." Samuel's attention snaps to focus. "What do you mean?" Marcus glances around nervously, then pulls Samuel behind the stables where they can't be overheard. "My Aunt Sarah, she works in the big house kitchen here. Been listening to Dr. Harrison talk with Master Thompson. That sickness, it's the same one that killed all those children in Charleston last month. The white children." His voice drops to a whisper. "But it don't affect our people the same way." Samuel's world tilts sideways. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your mama and mine, they get sick but they don't die from it. Not like the white children do. Dr. Harrison, he knows this, but he ain't telling the masters because he's making too much money treating the white families." Marcus's words hit Samuel like lightning. "The fever breaks after 3 days for our people, but the doctors keep it secret so they can charge more for house calls." The revelation crashes over Samuel in waves. His mother isn't dying, she's recovering. But Emma Whitmore, despite all the medical attention and expensive treatments, might not survive because the fever affects white children differently. The cruel irony makes his head spin. For once, being enslaved might actually protect someone from something. "You sure about this?" Samuel's voice cracks with desperate hope. Marcus nods grimly. "Aunt Sarah heard Dr. Harrison telling Master Thompson that they need to keep the house slaves working even if they show symptoms, because we recover quick. But they're telling the masters that everyone's at equal risk to justify their fees." His eyes burn with anger. "They're making money off letting white children die while keeping us working through sickness." Samuel's mind races. If this is true, then his mother will recover in a day or two. But Emma Whitmore doesn't have that long. Dr. Caldwell is treating her with methods that work for enslaved people, not white children. The treatments might even be making her worse. "Marcus, does Dr. Harrison know how to treat the white children the real way?" Samuel's heart pounds as he asks the question that could change everything. "Aunt Sarah says he does, but he's charging so much for regular treatments that he ain't gonna give away the real cure." Marcus spits in the dust. Money matters more than children's lives to these doctors. Samuel stares at the ground, his mind churning with possibilities and dangers. He could ride back to Riverside Plantation and tell Dr. Caldwell what he's learned. Maybe Emma could be saved with the right treatment. But revealing this information would expose the secret that's protecting enslaved people across the county. If the masters learn that their property isn't as vulnerable to the fever as they thought, they might work sick slaves even harder, assuming they'll recover anyway. But if Samuel says nothing, Emma Whitmore dies. And when she dies, Master Whitmore's grief and rage will fall on everyone in the quarters like a hurricane. Sick or not, they'll face punishment for failing to save his precious daughter. There's something else, Marcus says quietly, breaking into Samuel's spiraling thoughts. Aunt Sarah overheard Master Thompson talking to a slave trader yesterday. If this fever keeps spreading, if it starts killing off their workforce, they're planning to buy more slaves from the coast, fresh ones from Africa. His voice drops to barely a whisper. They're talking about separating families, selling off anyone who seems weak. The news hits Samuel like a physical blow. If the fever continues to spread and the masters think their enslaved population is dying off, they'll use it as an excuse to break up families and bring in new people they can control more easily. His mother's recovery might save her from the fever, but it won't protect her from being sold away. Samuel looks toward the horizon where Riverside Plantation lies hidden in the heat haze. Every minute he delays is another minute his mother suffers alone. Another minute Emma Whitmore slips closer to death. But the knowledge he now carries could save one life or doom dozens, depending on how he uses it. Marcus, if I tell our doctor what I learned here, will your aunt get in trouble? Samuel's voice is tight with the weight of responsibility no 12-year-old should carry. Probably, Marcus says honestly. But boy, you got to do what's right for your family. We all do. He places a hand on Samuel's shoulder. Just remember that whatever you choose, it ain't gonna save everybody. In this world, somebody always pays the price. As Samuel prepares to mount Master Whitmore's horse for the ride back, Marcus calls out one final warning. Boy, you be careful who you tell this to. Knowledge like this, it can get you killed just as easy as it can save you. White folks don't like slaves knowing things they don't know. The sun is beginning its descent toward the western horizon as Samuel spurs the horse back toward home. His mind churns with the terrible calculus of survival. Save Emma and risk exposing the secret that protects his people. Or let her die and face Master Whitmore's wrath when it falls on the quarters like a plague of locusts. But as the horse's hooves pound the dusty road, another thought creeps into Samuel's consciousness. What if there's a third option? What if he could save Emma without revealing the full truth? What if he could plant just enough doubt in Dr. Caldwell's mind to change the treatment, without exposing the medical conspiracy that's keeping enslaved people working through their sickness? The plan begins to form in his mind, dangerous and desperate but possibly brilliant. It would require him to lie to powerful white men, to manipulate a situation he barely understands, to walk the razor's edge between salvation and destruction. One wrong word could mean death not just for him, but for everyone who trusted him with their secrets. As Riverside Plantation comes into view, Samuel can see smoke rising from only half the quarter's chimneys. But for the first time since morning, that sight doesn't fill him with despair. If Marcus is right, those silent cabins don't mean death, they mean recovery. His people are healing while the masters panic and doctors profit from their ignorance. The question now is whether Samuel has the courage to gamble everything on a plan that could save lives or destroy them all. Samuel arrives back at Riverside Plantation to find chaos erupting across the grounds. 3 more cabins in the quarters stand empty, their occupants either recovering in hiding or taken to the woods by family members who understand that showing weakness means punishment. But it's the scene at the big house that makes Samuel's blood run cold. Master Whitmore stands on the front porch, his face twisted with rage and grief, while Dr. Caldwell shakes his head gravely. "I'm sorry, Thomas. I've done everything I can, but the fever has progressed too far. Perhaps if we'd caught it earlier." The doctor's voice trails off, but Samuel can hear the calculated regret in it, the tone of a man who's delivered this news before. "No," Master Whitmore's voice cracks like a whip across the plantation grounds. "I won't accept that. There has to be something, some treatment you haven't tried." His desperation is palpable, a father watching his world crumble around his dying child. Samuel knows he has to act now, before Dr. Caldwell gives up entirely. But his plan requires perfect timing and even more perfect lies. He dismounts and approaches the porch, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "Master," Samuel calls out, affecting the breathless urgency of someone with important news. "Dr. Harrison at the Thompson place, he wasn't there, but their house slaves told me something important." Both men turn to him with sharp attention. Dr. Caldwell's eyes narrow with suspicion. He doesn't like slaves offering medical opinions. But Master Whitmore grasps at any hope like a drowning man reaching for driftwood. "What did they say, boy? Speak up." Master Whitmore's voice carries a dangerous edge. Samuel knows he's walking into a trap of his own making, but Emma Whitmore's life hangs in the balance, and with it, the safety of everyone in the quarters. "They said Dr. Harrison been treating this fever different than most doctors. Said he uses cold compresses instead of hot ones and gives willow bark tea instead of laudanum." Samuel's voice wavers with carefully calculated uncertainty. "Said their master's children recovered when other plantations lost theirs." The lie is crafted perfectly, just enough truth mixed with plausible medical alternatives to sound believable. Samuel has heard Cook Mary talk about willow bark for headaches, and he knows that Dr. Caldwell has been using hot compresses and laudanum on Emma. Dr. Caldwell scoffs with professional indignation. "Absolute nonsense. Cold treatments would shock the system further, and willow bark is a folk remedy with no scientific basis." But Samuel catches a flicker of uncertainty in the doctor's eyes. In an era when medical knowledge is still evolving, even trained physicians sometimes rely on tradition over evidence. Master Whitmore, however, seizes on the information like a lifeline. "But what if Harrison knows something you don't? What if his methods work better?" His voice rises with desperate hope and growing anger at Dr. Caldwell's dismissive tone. "Thomas, you can't seriously consider taking medical advice from plantation slaves," Dr. Caldwell begins, but Master Whitmore cuts him off with a gesture that speaks volumes about shifting power dynamics. "My daughter is dying under your care, doctor. At this point, I'm willing to try anything." Master Whitmore's voice carries a threat that makes Dr. Caldwell step back slightly. "If some other doctor is saving children while mine dies, then maybe I need a different doctor." Samuel watches the exchange with fascination and terror. He successfully planted doubt in Master Whitmore's mind, but now he has to see it through without revealing too much. The next few minutes will determine whether his gamble saves lives or destroys them all. Dr. Caldwell's professional pride wars with his financial interests. Losing the Whitmore account would be a significant blow, but changing his treatment based on slave gossip would damage his reputation if it fails. "Very well," he says stiffly. "I suppose there's no harm in trying cooling treatments, though I maintain it's medically unsound." As the two men head inside to tend to Emma, Samuel feels a moment of triumph tinged with terror. He's manipulated two powerful white men into potentially saving Emma's life, but the consequences of his deception could be catastrophic if they discover his lies. He rushes toward the quarters, desperate to check on his mother. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the plantation grounds, and smoke is beginning to rise from a few more chimneys, a sign that Marcus was right about the recovery timeline. Samuel finds his mother Clara sitting up in their cabin, weak but alert. Her fever has broken, leaving her pale and shaky but clearly on the mend. The relief that floods through Samuel is so intense it makes his knees weak. "Baby, where you been all day?" Clara's voice is hoarse but loving. I was worried sick when Cook Mary said Master sent you riding off somewhere. She reaches for his hand, her touch still warm but no longer burning with fever. Had to fetch help for Miss Emma, Samuel says carefully. He can't tell his mother about the medical conspiracy or his dangerous gamble with Dr. Caldwell. The knowledge would only terrify her, and she needs rest to recover fully. But Clara's eyes, sharpened by years of surviving in a world where information means survival, see through his careful omissions. Samuel, baby, what ain't you telling me? You got that look like when you used to sneak cookies from Cook Mary's kitchen. Before Samuel can answer, voices from the big house carry across the plantation grounds. Master Whitmore is shouting again, but this time the tone is different, excited rather than angry. She's responding. The fever's breaking. Doctor, whatever you did, it's working. Samuel's heart leaps with relief and terror in equal measure. His gamble has worked. Emma is recovering. But now comes the dangerous part. Dr. Caldwell will want to understand why the new treatment succeeded where his previous methods failed. If he investigates too deeply, he might discover the truth about the fever's different effects on different populations. Clara squeezes her son's hand with surprising strength. Samuel, I don't know what you did today, but I can see it in your eyes. You took a risk, didn't you? A big one. Her voice carries the weight of maternal wisdom that sees through all pretenses. Mama, Samuel's voice breaks. The stress of the day, the weight of the secrets he carries, the fear of what might still come, it all crashes over him at once. I couldn't let her die because if she died, Master would blame us, all of us, and I couldn't let you die either. Clara pulls her son close, her embrace fierce despite her weakness. Baby, you listen to me. In this world, we do what we got to do to survive. Sometimes that means making choices that scare us. But you remember this, you got a good heart and a smart head, and that combination is gonna serve you well if you learn to use it careful. As if summoned by their conversation, footsteps approach their cabin. Through the thin walls, they hear Overseer Thompson's voice. Master wants to see the boy again. Says he's got questions about what he learned at the Thompson place. Samuel's blood turns to ice. Master Whitmore wants to hear more details about the medical advice that saved his daughter. But Samuel's lies were built on fragments and guesses. If he's questioned too closely, the whole deception will collapse. Clara's grip on his hand tightens. You remember what I taught you about white folks, baby. Tell them what they want to hear, not what's true. And if you don't know something, you make them think you do without actually lying. Her whispered advice carries the wisdom of decades spent navigating the deadly currents of plantation life. Samuel kisses his mother's forehead and steps outside to face whatever consequences await him. The big house glows with lamplight, and through the windows he can see figures moving about with the relieved energy of people who have just escaped disaster. Emma Whitmore is alive, his mother is recovering, and for the moment the quarters are safe from Master Whitmore's grief-fueled rage. But Samuel knows this reprieve is temporary. Dr. Caldwell will want answers. Master Whitmore will want to reward him for bringing life-saving information. And somewhere in those rewards and questions lie the seeds of discovery that could expose everything Samuel has worked to protect. As he walks toward the big house, Samuel rehearses his story one more time. He has to thread the needle between grateful master and suspicious doctor, between helpful slave and dangerous knowledge keeper. One wrong word could save his family or damn them all. The night air carries the sound of celebration from the big house and the quiet sighs of recovery from the quarters. For a brief moment, Samuel allows himself to feel pride in what he's accomplished. He saved lives today, white and black, through courage and cleverness that few adults could match. But he also knows that in a world built on the premise that people like him are property, being too clever can be just as dangerous as being too ignorant. The challenge now is surviving his own success. Master Whitmore's study feels like a courtroom as Samuel stands before the massive oak desk, trying to keep his hands from trembling. The master sits behind stacks of ledgers and correspondence, his face transformed by his daughter's recovery, the desperate father replaced by the calculating plantation owner. Dr. Caldwell hovers nearby, his medical bag clutched tightly as if it might escape, his eyes studying Samuel with the intensity of a hawk watching prey. "Boy," Master Whitmore begins, his voice carrying a warmth Samuel has never heard before, "you may have saved my daughter's life today. That information you brought from the Thompson place, it made all the difference." He pauses, leaning forward with interest that makes Samuel's skin crawl. "Now I want you to tell me exactly what those house slaves said. Every word." Samuel's mouth goes dry. He's prepared for this moment, but standing here under the combined scrutiny of master and doctor, his carefully rehearsed story feels flimsy as morning mist. "Well, master, they said their master's children got well when Dr. Harrison used different treatments. Cold cloths instead of hot ones and some kind of bark tea." Dr. Caldwell's eyes narrow with professional skepticism. "Which slaves told you this specifically? I'd like to speak with them myself to understand Dr. Harrison's methods better." The doctor's tone is casual, but Samuel recognizes the trap being laid. If Dr. Caldwell rides to the Thompson plantation asking questions, Samuel's entire deception will unravel. It was the kitchen workers, sir," Samuel stammers, his mind racing for plausible details. "They said they overheard Dr. Harrison talking to their master about it, said he learned it from some doctor up north who'd been treating this same fever." The lie builds on itself, each detail creating new vulnerabilities. Samuel watches Dr. Caldwell's face for signs of belief or suspicion, but the doctor's expression remains unreadable. Master Whitmore, however, nods with satisfaction. "You see, doctor, there are always new discoveries being made. Perhaps you medical men don't share information as freely as you should." Master Whitmore's tone carries a subtle rebuke that makes Dr. Caldwell's jaw tighten. "This boy brought me better medical advice than you did." The tension between the two men crackles like lightning before a storm. Samuel realizes he's inadvertently created a power struggle between master and doctor, with himself as the catalyst. Dr. Caldwell's professional pride wars with his need to maintain the lucrative Whitmore account. "Of course, Master Whitmore," Dr. Caldwell says stiffly, "I'm always interested in learning new techniques. Perhaps I should ride over to the Thompson place tomorrow and discuss methods with Dr. Harrison directly." His eyes fix on Samuel with unmistakable threat. "I'm sure we could clear up any misunderstandings about treatment protocols." Samuel's heart hammers against his ribs. If Dr. Caldwell speaks with Dr. Harrison, he'll discover that Harrison is in Charleston and has been for days. The entire story will collapse, and Samuel will face punishment not just for lying, but for making two powerful white men look foolish. "Actually, sir," Samuel says quickly, grasping for any delay, "the kitchen slave said Dr. Harrison left for Charleston this morning. Some emergency with a patient there." The detail is true, but using it this way feels like walking a tightrope over an abyss. Master Whitmore waves dismissively. "No matter. The important thing is that Emma is recovering." He reaches into his desk drawer and pulls out a silver coin, more money than Samuel has ever seen in one place. "This is for you, boy. Faithful service deserves reward." Samuel stares at the coin in shock. $1 could buy food for his family for a week, medicine for his mother's recovery, perhaps even small luxuries like sugar or coffee. But accepting it feels like sealing a contract written in blood. The master's gratitude comes with expectations that could prove impossible to meet. "Thank you, master," Samuel whispers, taking the coin with hands that shake despite his efforts to control them. The silver feels heavy as a millstone in his palm. Dr. Caldwell watches this exchange with growing resentment. "Thomas, I hope you won't let this incident undermine your confidence in professional medical care. Folk remedies and slave gossip are poor substitutes for trained expertise." His voice carries barely controlled anger at being upstaged by a 12-year-old slave. "Of course not, Doctor," Master Whitmore replies smoothly. "But results speak louder than credentials. Emma is alive because this boy brought me information you didn't have." The dismissal in his tone is subtle but unmistakable. As the two men continue their tense discussion, Samuel backs toward the door, desperate to escape before someone asks a question he can't answer. But just as he reaches the threshold, Dr. Caldwell's voice stops him cold. "Boy, wait, I have one more question." The doctor's tone is deceptively casual, but Samuel can hear the steel beneath it. "These kitchen slaves at the Thompson place, did they mention anything about how this fever affects different types of people differently?" The question hits Samuel like a physical blow. Dr. Caldwell suspects something about the fever's varying effects, but he's fishing for information rather than stating facts. Samuel's answer could either deflect suspicion or confirm the doctor's worst fears. "No, sir," Samuel says carefully. "They just talked about the treatments that worked for the white children." The partial truth feels safer than an outright lie, but Samuel can see calculation behind Dr. Caldwell's eyes. "Interesting," the doctor muses, "because I've been wondering why so few slaves seem to be dying from this fever, despite showing symptoms, almost as if they have some natural resistance to it." His gaze bores into Samuel with uncomfortable intensity. Master Whitmore's attention sharpens. "What are you suggesting, Doctor? That my slaves aren't as sick as they appear?" The question carries dangerous implications. If the enslaved population isn't as vulnerable as believed, their failure to work becomes insubordination rather than illness. Samuel realizes he's witnessing the exact conversation Marcus warned him about, the moment when medical truth becomes a weapon against enslaved people. If Dr. Caldwell voices his suspicions openly, every sick slave will be forced back to work, regardless of their condition. "I'm simply observing patterns," Dr. Caldwell says smoothly. "Medical science requires careful observation of all variables." But his eyes remain fixed on Samuel, as if the boy holds the key to some larger mystery. The weight of secrets presses down on Samuel like a physical force. He knows the truth that could save white children's lives, but doom his own people to harsher treatment. He understands the medical conspiracy that enriches doctors while families suffer, and he carries the knowledge that one wrong word could topple the careful balance he's tried to maintain. "May I go, Master?" Samuel's voice comes out smaller than he intended. "My mama's still feeling poorly, and she needs tending." The mention of family responsibility usually grants him permission to leave, but tonight Master Whitmore seems reluctant to let him go. "Of course, boy. Take care of your mother, she's valuable property." The casual reduction of Clara to economic asset stings, but Samuel nods gratefully and flees the study before either man can ask more questions. Outside, the night air feels clean after the suffocating tension of the big house. Samuel clutches the silver dollar so tightly it leaves marks on his palm. The coin represents both reward and burden, proof of his success and reminder of the expectations it creates. As he walks toward the quarters, Samuel sees lights in several cabins where darkness had reigned that morning. The recovery Marcus predicted is happening exactly as promised. By tomorrow, most of the sick will be well enough to work, though they'll hide their health to avoid immediate return to the fields. At his own cabin, Samuel finds his mother sitting up, color returning to her cheeks. Clara takes one look at her son's face and knows something momentous has happened. "What is it, baby? You look like you've seen a ghost." Her voice is stronger now, though still hoarse from fever. Samuel sits beside her and tells her everything: the silver dollar, Dr. Caldwell's suspicious questions, Master Whitmore's dangerous gratitude. Clara listens without interruption, her face growing more troubled with each revelation. "Samuel," she says finally, "you done something brave today, but brave and smart ain't always the same thing. That doctor, he knows something's not right. And when white folks start asking questions, colored folks start disappearing. The warning chills Samuel to the bone. He saved Emma Whitmore and protected his family for now, but he's also drawn attention that could prove deadly. In a world where enslaved people survive by being invisible, his success has made him dangerously visible. "What should I do, Mama?" Samuel asks, feeling 12 years old and terrified. Clara pulls him close, her embrace fierce with protective love. "You keep your head down and your mouth shut. Don't volunteer no more information. Don't try to be helpful beyond what's expected. And if that doctor comes asking more questions, you remember, you don't know nothing about nothing except what you already told them." As if summoned by their conversation, footsteps approach the cabin. Both mother and son freeze as a shadow falls across their doorway. But instead of the overseer or doctor they fear, it's Cook Mary, her face creased with worry. "Samuel, baby, I need to warn you about something," Mary whispers urgently. "I was cleaning the study after you left, and I heard Dr. Caldwell talking to Master about riding to other plantations tomorrow. He wants to ask questions about this fever, about how it affects different folks." Her voice drops even lower. "He's got suspicions, and suspicious white men are dangerous white men." The news hits Samuel like cold water. Dr. Caldwell isn't content to let the matter rest. He's planning to investigate, to compare notes with other doctors, to piece together the pattern that could expose everything Samuel has worked to protect. "There's more," Mary continues grimly. "I heard him say something about slave traders coming through next week. If he convinces Master that the quarters ain't as sick as they seem, there might be changes." She doesn't need to specify what kind of changes: family separations, sales, punishments for deception. Samuel stares at the silver dollar in his palm, its shine now tarnished by fear. His act of courage has set in motion forces he can't control, creating ripple effects that threaten everyone he loves. The victory of saving Emma Whitmore feels hollow against the possibility of losing his family. But as he looks at his mother's face, strong and determined despite her recent illness, Samuel feels something new stirring in his chest. Not just fear, but resolve. He's discovered that he can influence powerful people, can change outcomes through cleverness and courage. The knowledge is dangerous, but it's also power, perhaps the only kind of power available to someone in his position. Tomorrow will bring Dr. Caldwell's investigation, and whatever consequences follow. But tonight, Samuel sits with his recovering mother in their small cabin, holding a silver dollar earned through his own intelligence and bravery. For the first time in his young life, he understands that survival isn't just about enduring. Sometimes it's about fighting back in ways so subtle that the enemy doesn't even know they're under attack. The question now is whether he's clever enough to win a game where the stakes are life and death, and the rules are written by people who consider him property rather than human. Dawn comes too early, bringing with it the sound of Dr. Caldwell's carriage wheels crunching down the plantation drive. Samuel watches from the kitchen window as the doctor prepares for his investigative journey, his medical bag supplemented by a leather portfolio that probably contains notes about fever patterns and recovery rates. The sight makes Samuel's stomach churn with dread. "That man's got the look of trouble about him," Cook Mary mutters, kneading bread with more force than necessary. "Been asking too many questions, poking around where he don't belong." She glances at Samuel with meaningful eyes. "Some secrets ain't meant for white folks to know, baby. You remember that." Before Samuel can respond, Overseer Thompson bursts through the kitchen door, his face flushed with irritation. "Where's that boy Samuel? Master wants him in the fields today, helping with the cotton harvest. Says a slave smart enough to save his daughter ought to be smart enough to pick cotton faster than the rest." The assignment hits Samuel like a slap. Yesterday he was rewarded with silver and praise. Today he's being sent to the fields like common property. But worse than the demotion is the timing with Dr. Caldwell beginning his investigation and Samuel stuck in the cotton fields. He won't be able to monitor the situation or protect his community from whatever discoveries the doctor might make. "Yes, sir, Overseer Thompson," Samuel says quietly, but his mind races with the implications. Master Whitmore's gratitude has proven as fleeting as morning mist, replaced by the practical reality that valuable slaves belong in profitable work, not lounging around the big house. As Samuel heads toward the fields, he passes his mother's cabin and sees Clara through the open door, moving slowly but steadily as she prepares for her own return to work. The fever has left her weak, but she's alive and recovering, a small victory in a world where victories are measured in heartbeats and breaths. "Morning, baby," Clara calls softly. "You be careful out there today. Words going around that things might be changing soon." Her voice carries layers of meaning that Samuel understands all too well. Change on a plantation rarely benefits the enslaved population. The cotton fields stretch endlessly under the Georgia sun, white bowls bursting from green plants like stars against a verdant sky. Under different circumstances, Samuel might appreciate the beauty of it, but knowing that this beauty represents generations of suffering, that every fiber will be picked by hands that receive no payment for their labor, turns the pastoral scene into something sinister. Samuel joins the line of pickers, his small hands working automatically while his mind churns with worry about Dr. Caldwell's investigation. Around him, other slaves work with the mechanical efficiency born of years of practice, but he catches fragments of whispered conversations that reveal their shared anxiety. "Heard the doctor talking about resistance patterns." Slave trader seen in Savannah, asking about bulk purchases. "Master Johnson sold off 3 families last week, said they were malingering." Each whispered fragment adds to Samuel's growing dread. The fever that seemed like a temporary crisis is becoming the excuse for permanent changes that could tear apart the community he's fought to protect. By mid-morning, the sun beats down mercilessly, and Samuel's small hands are already raw from the rough cotton bowls. But physical discomfort pales beside his emotional turmoil when he sees a familiar figure approaching across the fields, Marcus from the Thompson plantation, his face grim with urgent news. Marcus works his way down the picking line until he reaches Samuel, pretending to help with the cotton while whispering crucial information. "Boy, that doctor of yours came to our place this morning. Been asking all kinds of questions about the fever, about recovery rates, about which folks got sick and which ones didn't." Samuel's blood turns to ice. What did he find out? "Too much," Marcus whispers, his hands never stopping their mechanical picking motion. Aunt Sarah tried to tell him she didn't know nothing, but he pressed her hard. Started asking about specific people, wanting to know exact dates when symptoms started and stopped. Marcus's voice drops even lower. "He's got a pattern mapped out, Samuel. He knows." The words hit Samuel like physical blows. Dr. Caldwell has pieced together the truth about the fever's differential effects, and armed with that knowledge, he poses a threat to every enslaved person in the county. Samuel's mind races through possible consequences: forced labor during illness, family separations, medical experimentation, or worse. "There's something else," Marcus continues, his voice barely audible above the rustling cotton plants. "Dr. Harrison came back from Charleston early. He and Dr. Caldwell are meeting this afternoon at our place. Aunt Sarah heard them planning to compare notes about treatment methods and recovery patterns." Samuel's heart sinks. Dr. Harrison returning early means that Dr. Caldwell will soon discover that the Thompson plantation's doctor was never there to give the medical advice Samuel claimed to have received. The entire deception will unravel, exposing Samuel as a liar and potentially revealing the source of his real information. "Marcus, we got to warn people," Samuel whispers urgently. "If they're meeting this afternoon, by tomorrow every master in the county might know the truth about the fever." But Marcus shakes his head grimly. "Warn them about what? To stop recovering, to pretend to be sicker than they are. Boy, there ain't no good choices here. If we act sick when we're well, they'll punish us for laziness. If we work while we're sick, they'll push us harder. And if they learn we've been hiding our recovery. He doesn't need to finish the sentence. As Marcus melts back into the line of cotton pickers, Samuel's mind churns with desperate possibilities. He needs to find a way to discredit Dr. Caldwell's investigation, to create doubt about his conclusions, or to redirect his attention away from the slave quarters entirely. But from his position in the cotton field, under the watchful eye of the overseer, Samuel's options are severely limited. The morning drags on with agonizing slowness, each minute bringing the doctor's meeting closer. Samuel's hands work automatically, filling his cotton sack while his mind searches for solutions to an increasingly impossible situation. Around him, other slaves continue their whispered conversations, sharing fragments of information that paint a picture of mounting crisis. Master Richardson's talking about selling anyone who can't work full capacity. Heard tell of a plantation in South Carolina where they worked the sick ones to death. My cousin up in Virginia says the fever's spreading there too, but the masters don't know about the different effects yet. Each piece of information adds to Samuel's understanding of the broader situation, but also to his sense of helplessness. The crisis extends far beyond Riverside Plantation, involving networks of doctors, masters, and traders whose decisions could affect thousands of lives. As the sun reaches its peak, Overseer Thompson rides through the fields on his horse, surveying the work with his usual critical eye. But today, he carries a leather satchel that he consults frequently, and Samuel catches sight of what looks like a list of names. The sight sends chills down his spine. Lists in a slave overseer's hands rarely mean anything good. Thompson stops his horse near Samuel's section of the field and calls out in a voice meant to carry. Listen up, all of you. There's been talk about malingering in the quarters, people claiming to be sicker than they really are. Starting tomorrow, anyone claiming illness will be examined by the doctor personally. Anyone found to be faking will face 20 lashes and double work assignments. The announcement hits the field like a thunderclap. Samuel watches as faces around him register fear and despair. The recovering slaves who have been hiding their improved health to avoid immediate return to full labor now face an impossible choice: reveal their recovery and face punishment for deception, or maintain their pretense and risk medical examination that could expose them anyway. But Thompson isn't finished. Furthermore, Master Whitmore has been approached by a trader from Savannah who's interested in purchasing healthy young slaves for resale in Mississippi. Anyone found to be malingering might find themselves on a boat heading downriver. The threat hangs in the air like a vulture, promising family separation and exile to the brutal sugar plantations of the Deep South. Samuel's hands shake as he continues picking cotton, his mind reeling from the implications. His success in saving Emma Whitmore has triggered a chain of events that now threatens the entire slave community. Dr. Caldwell's investigation has convinced Master Whitmore that his enslaved population has been deceiving him, and the master's response is swift and merciless. As afternoon approaches, Samuel watches the sun track across the sky, marking time until the doctor's meeting that will seal his community's fate. He thinks about the silver dollar hidden in his cabin, earned through courage and cleverness that now seem like children's games compared to the adult consequences bearing down on him. But even as despair threatens to overwhelm him, Samuel feels something else stirring in his chest, the same determination that drove him to ride to the Thompson plantation yesterday. He may be trapped in a cotton field, but his mind is free to plan and scheme. If Dr. Caldwell and Dr. Harrison are meeting this afternoon, perhaps there's still time to influence their conclusions. The plan that begins forming in Samuel's mind is desperate and dangerous, requiring him to slip away from the cotton field without being noticed, to travel to the Thompson plantation again, and to somehow disrupt the doctor's meeting without being caught. It's the kind of plan that could get him killed, but doing nothing guarantees the destruction of his community. As Samuel fills another cotton sack, his hands working with automatic efficiency while his mind races through possibilities, he makes a decision that will either save his people or damn them all. The boy who saved a white child through cleverness and courage is about to discover whether those same qualities can protect an entire community from the consequences of medical truth. The afternoon sun beats down mercilessly, but Samuel no longer feels its heat. His focus has narrowed to a single point, the moment when he'll slip away from the cotton field and gamble everything on one final desperate attempt to outmaneuver forces beyond his control. Time is running out, and with it, any hope of maintaining the fragile balance that has kept his community safe. But Samuel has learned something important over the past 2 days. Sometimes survival requires more than endurance. Sometimes it requires the courage to risk everything for the chance to win everything. The question now is whether a 12-year-old slave has the skill to outmaneuver 2 educated doctors and rewrite the narrative that threatens to destroy everyone he loves. The opportunity comes when Overseer Thompson rides to the far end of the cotton field to check on the workers near the creek. Samuel watches the man's back disappear behind a stand of pine trees, then makes his move. He slips between the cotton rows, moving low and fast, his heart hammering against his ribs as he puts distance between himself and the other pickers. Behind him, he hears old Moses call out in a voice loud enough to carry, "This heat's got me seeing things. Could have sworn I saw a rabbit running through them cotton plants." The old man's eyes meet Samuel's for just a moment, and Samuel sees understanding there. Moses knows what he's doing and is buying him precious seconds with misdirection. Samuel reaches the edge of the field and plunges into the woods that separate Riverside from the Thompson plantation. The dense undergrowth tears at his clothes and skin, but he pushes forward with desperate urgency. Through the trees, he can hear the distant sound of voices. The doctor's meeting has already begun. His plan is simple in concept but terrifying in execution. He needs to create a distraction that will disrupt the doctor's discussion without revealing his own involvement. More importantly, he needs to plant information that will cast doubt on their conclusions about the fever's differential effects. As Samuel approaches the Thompson plantation through the woods, he can see 2 carriages in front of the big house, Dr. Caldwell's familiar black buggy and a newer model that must belong to Dr. Harrison. Through an open window, he catches fragments of their conversation. The pattern is unmistakable, Harrison. The Negro population shows significantly different recovery rates. Economic implications are substantial. If they're naturally resistant, then working them through mild symptoms. Concerned about the precedent, if word spreads about differential mortality rates. Samuel's blood chills as he realizes how close the doctors are to conclusions that will doom his people. They're not just discussing medical observations. They're calculating the economic benefits of working enslaved people harder during illness. Moving carefully through the shadows cast by the big house, Samuel spots what he needs, the doctor's medical bag sitting unattended on the front porch while their owners confer inside. Dr. Caldwell's leather satchel lies open, revealing neat handwritten notes and what appears to be a chart comparing fever progression across different populations. Samuel's plan crystallizes in an instant. He needs to alter those notes, to introduce enough confusion and contradiction that the doctors will doubt their own conclusions. But as he creeps toward the porch, footsteps on the wooden floor inside make him freeze. Someone is approaching the window. "I tell you, Caldwell, there's something that boy at the Whitmore place isn't telling us." Dr. Harrison's voice carries clearly through the open window. His story about the kitchen slaves giving him medical advice, it doesn't add up. I've spoken with my house staff, and none of them recall any such conversation. Samuel's heart stops. Dr. Harrison has already begun unraveling his deception, questioning the very foundation of the lie that saved Emma Whitmore's life. If the doctors compare notes thoroughly, they'll realize that Samuel's information came from nowhere, or worse, that it came from knowledge no slave should possess. "I had the same suspicions," Dr. Caldwell replies grimly. "But the boy's intervention worked. The cooling treatments and willow bark tea proved effective where my previous methods failed. Either he stumbled onto correct information by pure chance, or," his voice trails off ominously, "or he knows more about this fever than he's admitting," Dr. Harrison finishes. The question is how a 12-year-old slave acquired medical knowledge that eluded two trained physicians. Samuel realizes with growing horror that his successful deception has backfired catastrophically. Instead of deflecting attention from the enslaved community's medical situation, he's focused the doctor's suspicions directly on himself. They're beginning to suspect that slaves possess medical knowledge that could threaten the established order. But before he can retreat, Samuel hears something that changes everything. Dr. Harrison's voice drops to a conspiratorial whisper. "There's another matter we need to discuss, Caldwell. I've been corresponding with colleagues in Charleston about this fever outbreak. They've discovered something that could revolutionize our understanding of disease resistance." Samuel creeps closer to the window, straining to hear every word. What he learns makes his blood run cold. "They've identified specific populations with natural immunity to certain diseases," Dr. Harrison continues. "Not just resistance, complete immunity. The medical implications are staggering, but so are the economic ones. Imagine owning workers who could labor in conditions that would kill others." Dr. Caldwell's interest is obvious in his eager response. "You're talking about breeding programs, selective cultivation of disease-resistant populations." The casual discussion of human breeding makes Samuel's stomach lurch with revulsion. "Exactly, but it requires careful documentation of resistance patterns, detailed family histories, medical examinations to identify the strongest specimens." Dr. Harrison's voice carries the enthusiasm of a man discussing livestock improvement. "The Charleston doctors are already implementing such programs with remarkable success." Samuel realizes he's stumbled onto something far worse than medical conspiracy. He's discovered a systematic plan to breed enslaved people like animals, selecting for traits that would make them more valuable as property. The fever outbreak isn't just being studied for treatment purposes. It's being used to identify breeding stock for future generations of human chattel. The knowledge hits him like a physical blow. His mother's recovery, the natural resistance that protected his community from the worst effects of the fever, these aren't advantages to be grateful for, but characteristics that mark them for a special kind of hell. The very traits that saved their lives could doom their children to lives of calculated exploitation. "The Whitmore boy concerns me," Dr. Caldwell says suddenly, his voice cutting through Samuel's spiraling thoughts. "If he's somehow aware of these resistance patterns, if slaves are sharing medical knowledge among themselves, it could complicate our research significantly. Then we need to be certain about what he knows and how he learned it," Dr. Harrison replies. "I suggest we examine him ourselves. A thorough medical examination might reveal whether he's been exposed to the fever personally, whether he's shown signs of the resistance we're documenting." Samuel's blood turns to ice as he realizes the doctors are planning to use him as a test subject. They want to examine him not to ensure his health, but to determine whether he possesses the disease resistance they're cataloging for their breeding experiments. But as terror threatens to overwhelm him, Samuel's mind latches onto a desperate possibility. The doctor's notes and charts sitting unattended on the porch represent their accumulated research. If those documents were to disappear or become corrupted, their entire investigation would be set back weeks or months. Moving with the desperate courage of someone with nothing left to lose, Samuel slips onto the porch and grabs Dr. Caldwell's leather satchel. His hands shake as he rifles through the contents, pages of meticulous notes, charts comparing recovery rates, correspondence with Charleston doctors about breeding programs, and most damning of all, a list of enslaved individuals categorized by their apparent disease resistance. Samuel recognizes names on that list: his mother Clara, marked as high-resistance specimen; his friend Marcus from this very plantation, designated as potential breeding stock; and dozens of others whose only crime was surviving a fever that killed white children. The casual reduction of human beings to medical data and breeding potential fills Samuel with rage that burns hotter than fear. Working quickly, Samuel tears several key pages from the research notes and stuffs them into his shirt. But as he prepares to flee, he realizes that simply stealing the documents isn't enough. The doctors will recreate their research, and other enslaved people will suffer the consequences. He needs to do something that will discredit their entire approach. An idea forms in his mind, dangerous beyond belief, but potentially devastating to the doctor's credibility. Samuel pulls out the charcoal pencil he uses for marking cotton weights and begins altering the remaining research notes. He changes numbers, switches names between categories, and introduces contradictions that will make the data appear unreliable. But his most audacious move involves the correspondence with Charleston. Samuel forges a letter in crude imitation of Dr. Harrison's handwriting, claiming that the Charleston research has been debunked, that the apparent disease resistance was actually caused by contaminated water supplies rather than genetic factors. It's a desperate lie, but one that might plant enough doubt to derail the breeding program discussions. As Samuel works, sweat pouring down his face despite the afternoon shade, he hears the doctor's conversation moving toward the porch. They're preparing to review their notes together, which means discovery is imminent. Samuel shoves the altered documents back into the satchel and prepares to run, but footsteps on the porch floor tell him it's too late. "What the devil?" Dr. Harrison's voice explodes with outrage as he sees Samuel crouched beside the medical bags. "Boy, what are you doing here? How dare you touch a white man's property?" Samuel springs to his feet and runs, crashing through the garden beds and toward the woods with both doctors shouting behind him. But as he flees, he hears Dr. Caldwell's voice rising above the commotion. "The notes! Check the notes, if he's damaged the research." Samuel's heart pounds as he crashes through the underbrush, branches tearing at his clothes and skin. Behind him, he can hear the doctors discovering his sabotage, their voices rising with fury as they realize the extent of the damage to their carefully compiled research. But even as relief floods through him at his successful escape, Samuel knows this victory comes with a terrible price. He's now a known fugitive, his face burned into the memories of two powerful white men who will stop at nothing to recapture him. Worse, his sabotage will be discovered eventually, and when it is, the consequences will fall not just on him but on his entire community. As Samuel runs through the woods toward home, the stolen research papers burning like coals against his chest, he realizes that saving his people has required him to sacrifice any chance of a normal life. He's crossed a line that can never be uncrossed, transforming himself from a clever child into a dangerous enemy of the plantation system itself. The question now is whether his desperate gamble will buy enough time for his community to prepare for the storm that's coming, or whether he simply delayed an inevitable reckoning that will destroy everyone he loves. Behind him, the sound of horses being saddled tells him that the pursuit has already begun. The real chase is just starting, and the stakes are higher than one boy's life. They involve the future of every enslaved person who carries the genetic gift that marks them as valuable breeding stock in a system that sees them as nothing more than property. Samuel crashes through the woods with the sound of pursuing hoofbeats growing closer behind him. The stolen documents pressed against his chest feel like they're burning through his shirt, each page containing evidence of horrors beyond his worst nightmares. As he runs, Branches tear at his face and clothes, but the physical pain is nothing compared to the anguish of what he's discovered. He reaches the edge of Riverside Plantation just as the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon. The cotton fields stretch before him, dotted with bent figures still working under Overseer Thompson's watchful eye. Samuel knows he can't return to the fields by now. The doctors have undoubtedly sent word of his theft and sabotage. Going back would mean walking into a trap. Instead, Samuel circles wide around the plantation, using every bit of cover the landscape provides. His destination is the old tobacco barn, abandoned years ago when Master Whitmore switched entirely to cotton production. It's hidden enough to provide temporary shelter while he figures out his next move. And more importantly, it's where the enslaved community sometimes meets in secret to share information and plan quiet resistance. As Samuel slips into the musty darkness of the abandoned barn, his hands shake as he pulls out the stolen documents. Even in the dim light filtering through gaps in the weathered boards, the words on these pages paint a picture of systematic dehumanization that makes his soul recoil. The correspondence between Dr. Harrison and his Charleston colleagues reads like a manual for livestock management. They discuss optimal breeding pairs based on disease resistance, plans for culling weak specimens, and methods for enhancing desirable traits in future generations. Samuel's mother Clara is listed not just as disease-resistant, but as a prime breeding female with proven fertility and strong offspring. The clinical language makes him want to vomit. But it's the broader scope of the plan that truly terrifies him. This isn't just about one plantation or one fever outbreak. It's a coordinated effort involving multiple doctors, plantations, and even government officials to create a superior slave population through selective breeding. The documents mention test sites in 3 states, funding from northern investors, and timelines stretching decades into the future. Samuel's hands tremble as he reads about children being separated from families based on medical evaluations, about women being forced into breeding programs, regardless of their wishes, about men being castrated if they fail to meet genetic criteria. The casual brutality of it all, discussed in the same tone doctors might use to talk about improving cattle stock, makes him understand that he stumbled onto something far larger and more evil than he ever imagined. A sound outside the barn makes Samuel freeze footsteps approaching through the tall grass. He quickly stuffs the documents back into his shirt and prepares to run, but the voice that calls out is familiar and welcome. "Samuel, baby, you in there?" It's his mother Clara, her voice tight with worry and fear. "The whole plantation's buzzing about you causing trouble at the Thompson place. What did you do?" Samuel emerges from the shadows to find not just his mother, but Cook Mary, Old Moses, and 3 other trusted members of the enslaved community. Their faces show a mixture of concern, fear, and grim determination that tells him word of his situation has already spread. "Mama," Samuel's voice cracks as he sees the worry lines etched deep in Clara's face. "I found out what they're planning. It's worse than we thought. So much worse." He pulls out the stolen documents with shaking hands. "They want to breed us like animals. They're planning to tear apart families, force people together, decide who lives and who dies based on how useful we are to them." The group gathers around as Samuel spreads the papers in the dim light. Cook Mary, who can read better than most, takes one look at the documents and her face goes pale. "Sweet Jesus," she whispers. "They got it all planned out. Names, families, children." Her voice breaks as she recognizes people she's known for years reduced to data points in a breeding experiment. Old Moses, his weathered hands shaking with rage, points to a section about elimination protocols. They're talking about killing folks who don't meet their standards, calling it medical necessity, but it's murder, plain and simple. His voice carries the weight of 7 decades of witnessing plantation horrors, but even he seems shaken by the scope of what they're reading. Clara pulls Samuel close, her embrace fierce with protective love and terror. "Baby, what you've done here taking these papers, it's the bravest thing I've ever seen. but it's also the most dangerous. They're gonna come for you with everything they got. As if summoned by her words, the sound of horses and dogs echoes across the plantation grounds. Through gaps in the barn walls, they can see torches moving through the darkness, a search party spreading out from the big house like spiders across a web. They got the hounds out, Moses observes grimly. Won't be long before they track him here. He looks at Samuel with eyes that have seen too much suffering but still burn with defiant fire. Boy, you got a choice to make. You can run, try to get to the north where abolitionists might help you, or you can stay and fight this thing from the inside. Cook Mary shakes her head vigorously. He's just a child, Moses, 12 years old. How's he supposed to fight something this big? But even as she speaks, her eyes show she understands that Samuel stopped being just a child the moment he chose to act against the system that owned him. Samuel looks around at the faces of the people who have raised him, protected him, loved him despite the brutal circumstances of their shared bondage. The decision tears at his heart, but the stolen documents in his hands represent something bigger than his own safety. I can't run, Samuel says quietly, his voice carrying a strength that surprises even him. If I disappear, they'll take their anger out on all of you, and these papers, he holds up the research documents. This information could warn other plantations, other communities. People need to know what's coming. Clara's eyes fill with tears, but she nods with fierce pride. Then we help you do it right. But first, we got to get you somewhere safe while we figure out how to spread this warning without getting everyone killed. Old Moses speaks up with the authority of someone who's survived plantation life longer than anyone else present. There's a place, the old Seminole hideout down by the river swamp. Been abandoned for years, but it's hidden good. White folks are too scared of the swamp to search there thoroughly. As the search party draws closer, their torches casting dancing shadows through the barn walls, the group makes quick plans. Clara and Cook Mary will return to the quarters and act normally, spreading word quietly about what Samuel discovered without revealing the source. Moses will guide Samuel to the swamp hideout and help him figure out how to get the information to other plantations without being caught. But as they prepare to separate, Samuel makes a decision that changes everything. Mama, I need you to do something for me. Take one of these papers, the list with all the names on it. Hide it somewhere safe. If something happens to me, if they catch me, or worse, make sure that list gets to the Underground Railroad folks. People up north need to know what's being planned down here. Clara takes the paper with trembling hands, understanding the weight of what her son is asking. This list contains the names and genetic evaluations of hundreds of enslaved people across multiple plantations. Information that could either save them or doom them, depending on who gets hold of it. The sound of hounds grows closer, and Samuel knows his time is running out. As he prepares to follow Moses into the treacherous swamp that represents his only hope of temporary safety, he takes one last look at his mother's face. Mama, no matter what happens to me, remember that what I did today, I did for all of us. For every child who might be born into this system, for every family they want to tear apart, for every person they see as nothing more than breeding stock. Samuel's voice carries a maturity that breaks Clara's heart even as it fills her with pride. Clara kisses her son's forehead, tasting the salt of her own tears. You remember, baby, you're not fighting this alone. Every person in these quarters, every slave on every plantation, we're all connected. What you do tonight, you do for all of us. As Samuel and Moses slip out the back of the barn and disappear into the darkness toward the swamp, the search party's torches grow brighter. Dogs bark in the distance, following a scent trail that will lead them to the abandoned barn, but no further. Moses knows tricks for breaking scent trails that he learned decades ago from runaway slaves who chose death over continued bondage. Clara and Cook Mary wait until they're sure Samuel and Moses have enough time to reach the swamp before they emerge from the barn. As they walk back toward the quarters, They carry with them the terrible knowledge of what's being planned, and the desperate hope that a 12-year-old boy's courage might somehow derail a conspiracy that reaches from Georgia to Charleston to the halls of power in Washington. Behind them, the search party converges on the barn, finding only the lingering scent of fear and the echo of whispered plans. The real battle is just beginning, fought not with weapons or armies, but with stolen documents, whispered warnings, and the unbreakable bonds between people who refuse to accept that they are property rather than human beings. In the swamp, Samuel follows Moses deeper into a world of cypress trees and alligator eyes, carrying with him the knowledge that could save his people or get them all killed. The papers pressed against his chest represent more than stolen documents. They're proof that even in the darkest system ever devised by human cruelty, resistance is possible for those brave enough to risk everything for the chance to fight back. The night deepens around them, filled with the sounds of searching men and hunting dogs, but also with the whispered prayers of people who dare to hope that a child's courage might light the way toward something better. The Seminole hideout squats like a forgotten secret deep in the heart of the swamp, where cypress trees twist toward the sky and Spanish moss hangs like tattered curtains. Moses leads Samuel through knee-deep water that reflects the moon like scattered silver coins, their movement slow and careful to avoid disturbing the alligators that watch from the shadows with prehistoric patience. "This place saved my life once," Moses whispers as they approach a structure that seems to grow from the swamp itself, walls of woven palmetto and mud that blend seamlessly with the surrounding vegetation. "Back in '98, when I tried to run the first time, Seminole chief named Osceola built these hidey holes for runaways before the army drove most of his people west. Been empty for 20 years, but it's still solid." Samuel slumps against the rough wall, exhaustion finally catching up with him. The stolen documents crinkle against his chest with every breath, a constant reminder of the weight he carries. In the distance, they can hear the faint baying of hounds, but the sounds seem to be moving away from the swamp. Even experienced trackers fear the dangers hidden in these dark waters. "Moses," Samuel says quietly, his voice barely audible above the chorus of frogs and night birds, "how do we fight something this big? These papers show they got doctors, plantation owners, even government folks involved. They got money, power, connections. We got nothing but what we stole." The old man settles beside Samuel with a grunt, his weathered hands surprisingly gentle as he helps examine the documents by moonlight filtering through the canopy. "Boy, you thinking like they want you to think, like we're powerless. But power ain't just about money and white skin. Power's about knowing things other folks don't know and having the courage to act on that knowledge." Moses points to specific entries in the research notes. "Look here," they list plantation after plantation, hundreds of names, but they also list weaknesses in their system, dates when shipments are planned, routes for moving people, names of folks who might not be loyal to their cause. His voice carries the wisdom of someone who spent decades watching and learning. "Information's a weapon, Samuel. Question is whether we got the courage to use it." Samuel studies the papers with new eyes, beginning to see patterns that hadn't been obvious before. The breeding program requires coordination between multiple plantations, medical examinations that will require moving people between locations, and most importantly, a level of secrecy that could be shattered by the right kind of exposure. "Moses, what if we don't try to fight them directly? What if we make it impossible for them to keep their plans secret?" Samuel's mind races with possibilities. These documents show they're planning to start the program next month, but if plantation owners across the county knew what was really planned for their property? The old man's eyes light up with understanding. "You thinking about turning them against each other? Make the masters worry that this breeding program threatens their own interests?" He nods approvingly. "Smart boy, but dangerous. We'd need to get information to the right people without them knowing where it came from." As they plan, the sounds of the search party fade into the distance, replaced by the natural symphony of the swamp. But Samuel knows their temporary safety is illusory. By morning, every slave catcher in 3 counties will be looking for him, and the resources arrayed against him are vast. "There's something else," Samuel says, pulling out a specific document that's been haunting him. This letter talks about what they call resistant specimens being shipped to a special facility in South Carolina. Moses, they're talking about taking people away from their families permanently, using them for medical experiments. Moses's face hardens as he reads the clinical description of human beings being treated like laboratory animals. Here's what I was afraid of. It ain't enough for them to own our bodies. Now they want to own our children's bodies, and their children's bodies, forever and ever. His voice carries a rage that burns like banked coals. Samuel looks at the old man who's become his unlikely ally in this desperate mission. "Moses, why are you helping me? You could have told me to run, saved yourself the risk. Why are you here?" Moses is quiet for a long moment, listening to the night sounds of the swamp. "Boy, I got children scattered across 3 states, sold off when they got old enough to be valuable. Got grandchildren I ain't never met, probably never will. But if there's a chance, even a small one, that what you're doing might help them, might stop this breeding program from destroying more families." He trails off, but Samuel understands. "We're doing this for the children who ain't been born yet," Moses continues. "For the families that might get to stay together if we can stop this madness. That's worth risking an old man's life for." As dawn approaches, they develop a plan that's audacious in its simplicity. Samuel will return to Riverside Plantation, not to surrender, but to plant information that will create chaos within the conspiracy itself. Using his knowledge of the big house's routines and his access as a formerly trusted slave, he'll place altered documents that suggest the breeding program is actually a northern abolitionist plot to weaken southern plantations from within. "It's crazy enough to work," Moses muses as they refine the details. "These plantation owners are so paranoid about northern interference, they'll believe their own doctors might be working against them, especially if the evidence looks convincing." Samuel's part of the plan requires him to forge additional documents using information from the stolen papers, creating correspondence that appears to show Dr. Caldwell and Dr. Harrison taking money from abolitionists to identify the strongest slaves for liberation, rather than breeding. It's a dangerous deception, but one that could turn the conspiracy against itself. "The tricky part," Moses warns, "is making sure the forged documents get discovered in a way that don't point back to you. Master Whitmore's got to find them and think they came from someone else entirely." As they work through the details, Samuel feels a mixture of terror and exhilaration. He's planning to infiltrate the big house while every white man in the county is looking for him, plant evidence that could destroy the careers of 2 prominent doctors, and escape again without being caught. It's the kind of plan that should be impossible for a 12-year-old slave. But Samuel has advantages that his pursuers don't fully understand. He knows the plantation's routines better than anyone, except the people who have lived there their entire lives. He understands which slaves can be trusted and which ones report back to the master. Most importantly, he has the desperation of someone fighting for his family's survival. "Moses, there's one more thing," Samuel says as they prepare to leave the hideout. "If this goes wrong, if I get caught, you make sure my mama knows why I did it. Make sure she knows I wasn't just being foolish or brave. I was trying to save our people from something worse than death." Moses grips Samuel's shoulder with surprising strength. "Boy, if you get caught, it won't matter much what your mama knows. They'll make an example of you that'll scare every slave in Georgia." His honesty is brutal but necessary. But if you succeed, if you can turn this conspiracy against itself and save even some of the families they want to destroy, then you'll have done something that'll be remembered long after we're all gone. As the eastern sky begins to lighten with the first hints of dawn, Samuel and Moses emerge from the swamp hideout. The search parties have moved on for now, but they'll be back, and next time they'll come with more men and better dogs. Samuel's window of opportunity is closing rapidly. The plan requires perfect timing and enormous courage. Samuel must reach the plantation, plant the forged documents, and escape again before the search resumes. Meanwhile, Moses will begin spreading carefully crafted rumors among the slave community, preparing them for the chaos that will erupt when the forged documents are discovered. "Remember," Moses whispers as they part ways at the edge of the swamp, "you ain't just fighting for your own family anymore. You're fighting for every enslaved person whose name is on those lists, every child who might be torn from their parents, every woman who might be forced into their breeding programs. That's a heavy burden for young shoulders, but it's also a powerful reason to succeed." Samuel nods, understanding the weight of responsibility that settled on him like a mantle. He's no longer just a clever boy trying to save his sick mother. He's become a key figure in a resistance movement that extends far beyond any single plantation. The stolen documents pressed against his chest represent not just evidence of planned atrocities, but weapons in a war that will determine the fate of thousands. As Samuel prepares to leave the relative safety of the swamp for the extreme danger of the plantation, he thinks about his mother Clara, probably lying awake in their cabin, wondering if she'll ever see her son again. He thinks about Emma Whitmore, recovered from her fever and safe in her comfortable bed, unaware that her life was saved by someone the law considers property. He thinks about all the names on the breeding program lists, people going about their daily lives unaware of the fate being planned for them. The morning air carries the sound of roosters crowing across the countryside, marking the beginning of another day in a world built on human bondage. But Samuel knows that this day will be different. Today, he'll either strike a blow against the most evil conspiracy he can imagine, or die trying. The boy who 3 days ago was just another plantation slave has become something new. A resistance fighter armed with stolen knowledge and desperate courage, preparing to risk everything for the chance to save his people from a fate worse than slavery itself. As he steps out of the swamp and begins the dangerous journey back to Riverside Plantation, Samuel carries with him the hopes and prayers of everyone who dares to believe that, even in the darkest circumstances, resistance is possible for those brave enough to fight. Dawn breaks over Riverside Plantation with deceptive tranquility, the morning mist rising from the fields like ghosts of all the dreams that have died in this place. Samuel crouches in the tree line, watching the familiar rhythms of plantation life resume despite the chaos of the previous night. Smoke rises from the kitchen chimney, where Cook Mary is already preparing breakfast, and he can see his mother Clara moving slowly between the cabins, checking on those still recovering from the fever. The sight of his mother, alive and strong despite everything they've endured, gives Samuel the final surge of courage he needs. In his hands, he carries the carefully forged documents that Moses helped him create, letters that appear to show Dr. Caldwell and Dr. Harrison accepting payment from Northern abolitionists to identify the strongest slaves for a massive liberation operation disguised as medical research. Samuel waits until he sees Master Whitmore emerge from the big house and head toward the stables, his morning inspection of the plantation. This gives Samuel perhaps 20 minutes to slip into the house, plant the forged documents where they'll be discovered naturally, and escape before anyone notices his presence. Moving with the silent grace born of years navigating the plantation without being seen, Samuel approaches the big house from the rear. The kitchen door stands slightly ajar, and through it he can hear Cook Mary humming while she works. She's the only person in the house at this hour, which makes the infiltration possible but also terrifying. If Mary discovers him, she'll face an impossible choice between protecting him and protecting herself. Samuel slips through the kitchen like a shadow, his bare feet silent on the wooden floors. The forged documents feel like they're burning against his chest as he moves through the familiar corridors toward Master Whitmore's study. Every creak of the old house sounds like thunder in his ears, but he forces himself to move with deliberate calm. The study door stands open, revealing the desk where just days ago Samuel had been rewarded for saving Emma Whitmore's life. Now that same desk represents his target. He needs to place the forged documents among Master Whitmore's regular correspondence, so they'll appear to have arrived through normal channels. As Samuel arranges the papers carefully among existing letters and bills, his hands shake with the magnitude of what he's attempting. These forged documents will either save hundreds of enslaved people from the breeding program or get Samuel killed when their deception is discovered. There's no middle ground, no safe outcome. But as he turns to leave, footsteps in the hallway freeze his blood. Someone is approaching the study, and escape through the main corridor is now impossible. Samuel looks desperately around the room for another exit, finally spotting the large window that opens onto the side garden. It's a dangerous drop, but his only chance. The footsteps grow closer as Samuel wrestles with the window latch, his sweaty fingers slipping on the metal mechanism. Finally, it gives way, and he pushes the window open just as the study door swings wide. Samuel doesn't look back to see who's entering. He simply throws himself through the window and hits the ground hard, rolling to absorb the impact. Pain shoots through his shoulder and ribs, but Samuel forces himself to his feet and runs toward the cover of the outbuildings. Behind him, he hears a voice from the study window, Emma Whitmore, calling for her father with excitement about something she's found. Samuel's heart pounds as he realizes the girl he saved from fever has just discovered the forged documents that could either save or doom his people. Samuel takes refuge in the abandoned tobacco barn where this desperate journey began, listening to the growing commotion from the big house. Through the gaps in the weathered boards, he can see people gathering on the front porch, Master Whitmore, Overseer Thompson, and several other white men whose faces are grim with alarm. Then he sees Dr. Caldwell's carriage racing up the drive at dangerous speed, dust flying from the wheels. The doctor leaps down before the horse has fully stopped, his face contorted with rage and desperation. Samuel realizes that Dr. Caldwell has come to confront Master Whitmore about the stolen research documents, unaware that he's walking into a trap of Samuel's making. The confrontation that follows is loud enough to carry across the plantation grounds. Samuel can hear Master Whitmore's voice rising with fury as he waves the forged documents, accusing Dr. Caldwell of being in league with abolitionists. Dr. Caldwell's protests of innocence only seem to inflame the situation further, especially when he admits that his research notes were indeed stolen by a slave boy. "You let a nigger boy steal medical research that you were selling to Yankees." Master Whitmore's voice cracks like a whip across the morning air. "And now, you come here trying to convince me that you're loyal to Southern interests." Samuel watches through the barn slats as the scene unfolds with terrible beauty. Dr. Caldwell, faced with forged evidence of his treachery and the suspicious timing of his research theft, finds himself trapped in an impossible position. He can't explain the stolen documents without revealing the breeding program conspiracy, but he can't deny the accusations without appearing guilty. The arrival of Dr. Harrison in his own carriage adds another layer of chaos to the situation. The two doctors, who hours earlier had been collaborating on plans to treat enslaved people like breeding stock, now face each other as suspected traitors and rivals. Master Whitmore plays them against each other with calculating skill, using the forged documents to create suspicion that destroys their partnership. But Samuel's moment of triumph is shattered when he sees Overseer Thompson approaching the barn with two armed men. Somehow, his hiding place has been discovered, and escape routes are rapidly disappearing. Samuel clutches the remaining stolen documents, the real research papers that could still expose the breeding program if they reach the right hands. As Thompson and his men surround the barn, Samuel makes a decision that surprises even himself. Instead of trying to run or hide, He walks out into the open with his hands raised, the stolen documents clearly visible in his grasp. "Master Whitmore," Samuel's voice carries across the plantation with startling authority for a 12-year-old slave. "I got something you need to see before you trust those doctors any further." The entire gathering turns to stare at Samuel, the runaway slave boy who dares to speak publicly to white men. Master Whitmore's face goes through a series of emotions: rage at Samuel's audacity, curiosity about what he might know, and calculation about how to use this situation to his advantage. "Boy, you've got some nerve showing your face here after the trouble you've caused," Master Whitmore says, but his tone is more intrigued than angry. "What could you possibly have that would interest me?" Samuel holds up the genuine research documents, his voice steady despite the terror coursing through his veins. "Master, these papers show what those doctors were really planning, not selling slaves to Yankees, something worse, much worse." The crowd of white men exchanges glances as Samuel approaches, the genuine research papers clearly different from the forged documents Emma found in the study. Dr. Caldwell's face goes pale as he recognizes his own handwriting on papers that contain far more damaging information than anything the abolitionists might have written. "These doctors weren't selling us to Yankees," Samuel continues, his voice gaining strength as he speaks truth backed by documentary evidence. "They were planning to breed us like cattle. Your property, master, they wanted to tear apart families, force people together like animals, all to create what they call superior slave stock for their own profit." Samuel hands the genuine research documents to Master Whitmore, watching the man's face change as he reads the clinical descriptions of human breeding programs, the lists of valuable specimens, including Samuel's own mother, and the casual discussions of family separation and forced reproduction. The silence that follows is deafening. Master Whitmore may be a cruel man who owns other human beings, but he's also a businessman who understands when someone is trying to manipulate his property for their own gain. The genuine research documents make it clear that the doctors plan to use his enslaved population for experiments that would benefit them financially while potentially damaging his investment. Dr. Caldwell tries desperately to explain, but his protests sound hollow in the face of his own written words describing enslaved people as breeding stock and experimental subjects. Dr. Harrison, realizing that their conspiracy has been exposed, attempts to flee but finds his path blocked by angry plantation owners who now see him as a threat to their economic interests. "You see, master," Samuel says quietly, "I didn't steal those papers to help Yankees. I stole them to protect your property from doctors who wanted to use it for their own purposes. They were planning to convince you that breeding programs would improve your investment, but really they wanted to use your people for medical experiments that might have killed them." Master Whitmore looks from the genuine research documents to the forged ones his daughter found, understanding beginning to dawn in his eyes. "Boy, are you telling me you created those other papers? You made it look like these doctors were working with abolitionists to hide the fact that they were actually planning to experiment on my slaves." Samuel nods, knowing that his confession could mean death, but understanding that the truth is his only remaining weapon. "Yes, master. I knew if you found out they wanted to breed your property like animals, you'd be angry. But I also knew you might think the breeding was a good business idea if they explained it right. So I made you think they were traitors instead." The admission hangs in the air like smoke from a gun. Samuel has confessed to theft, forgery, deception, and manipulation of white men, crimes that would normally result in immediate execution. But he's also revealed that his actions protected Master Whitmore's financial interests from exploitation by unscrupulous doctors. Master Whitmore stares at Samuel for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he speaks. "Boy, what you've done is the most audacious thing I've ever seen a slave attempt. You've lied to me, stolen from white men, forged documents, and manipulated situations beyond your station. He pauses, and Samuel prepares for the death sentence he knows is coming. But you've also exposed a conspiracy that would have cost me thousands of dollars and potentially destroyed my best property through medical experimentation. Master Whitmore's voice carries a grudging respect that shocks everyone present. You've shown more loyalty to my interests than these so-called professional men. The crowd watches in stunned silence as Master Whitmore makes a decision that will echo through the plantation for years to come. Instead of ordering Samuel's execution, he turns to Overseer Thompson. Lock up those doctors until the sheriff arrives. Theft of slave property and conspiracy to defraud are serious crimes. Then he looks back at Samuel. As for you, boy, you've earned something no slave on this plantation has ever earned: my respect. That doesn't make you free, but it means you'll be treated according to the value you've shown. Samuel feels his knees go weak with relief, but he knows this isn't complete victory. The breeding program conspiracy extends far beyond these two doctors, involving networks of medical professionals and plantation owners across multiple states. The papers he's revealed will disrupt the local operation, but the larger threat remains. As the doctors are led away in chains and the crowd disperses, Samuel finds himself face to face with Master Whitmore one final time. The man who owns him studies Samuel's face with something approaching curiosity. "Boy, I don't understand you," Master Whitmore says quietly. "You're smarter than most white men I know, braver than soldiers I've seen, and more loyal to my interests than my own overseer. If you were white, you'd be running your own plantation by now." He pauses, the weight of the system they both live under hanging between them. "But you're not white, and that's a reality neither of us can change." Samuel meets his master's eyes with steady courage. "Master, I didn't do this for you. I did it for my mama, for my friends, for all the people whose names were on those lists. I did it because no matter what color we are, we're still people, not breeding stock." The words are dangerous, challenging the very foundation of the plantation system, but Samuel has moved beyond fear into something larger. Master Whitmore nods slowly, understanding passing between them despite the impossible gulf of their circumstances. "I know, boy, and that's what makes you both valuable and dangerous." He turns to walk away, then stops. "Your mother can work in the big house from now on. Light duties, good food, warm quarters. Consider it payment for services rendered." As Master Whitmore disappears into the big house, Samuel stands alone in the yard where his desperate gamble has played out. He saved his community from the immediate threat of the breeding program, exposed the doctor's conspiracy, and even earned a form of protection for his family. But he's also revealed capabilities that mark him as permanently dangerous to the system that holds him. Samuel walks slowly toward the quarters where his mother waits, knowing that this victory came at a price that will follow him for the rest of his life. He's no longer just property. He's proven himself capable of outthinking and outmaneuvering white men, of manipulating systems designed to crush people like him. That knowledge will never be forgotten or forgiven by those who believe that such intelligence is impossible in someone they consider subhuman. As he approaches the cabin where his mother Clara stands waiting with tears of relief streaming down her face, Samuel understands that he's crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. He's become something new, not free, but no longer truly enslaved. He's become a person who has looked at an impossible situation and found a way to win, not through violence or escape, but through intelligence, courage, and an understanding of human nature that would be remarkable in anyone of any age or race. The boy who 3 days ago was just another plantation slave has become a legend that will be whispered about in slave quarters across the South, proof that even in the darkest circumstances, resistance is possible for those brave enough to risk everything for the chance to protect the people they love. The sun sets over Riverside Plantation, casting long shadows across the cotton fields where Samuel's people continue their labor. But tonight, they work with knowledge that their families are safe from one particular horror: saved by a 12-year-old boy who refused to accept that intelligence and courage were limited by the color of his skin. Samuel's story will be remembered long after the plantation system that created it has crumbled to dust, a testament to the power of the human spirit to find hope and create change, even in the most hopeless circumstances.